Today's guest is French Hill, Republican Congressman from Arkansas and chair of the House Financial Services Committee. Chairman Hill has played a central role in crafting legislation to bring regulatory clarity to the crypto markets, most recently co-authoring the House's Stablecoin bill, the Stable Act, that passed out of committee earlier this month. Chairman Hill, we're thrilled to have you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, great to be with you. Thanks for the invitation. Welcome.
Of course. So we always start out by asking our guests a question we like to ask. What does crypto in America mean to you?
It means the future of payments. It means the future of financial services, and distributed ledger technology and the use of blockchain, in my view, will revolutionize the way we do a lot of peer-to-peer transaction among ourselves. But I think it'll also be a new basis for operating systems across many, many different businesses way outside the lane of just financial services.
And before we get into what's going on in Congress, can you tell us a little bit about how you even became interested in crypto? You were the chair of the Digital Assets Subcommittee last Congress, but what kind of drew you into advocating or even learning about this space?
You bet. Well, I've always been drawn to new technology in my private business career. I've been in both venture capital and private equity, as well as in investment banking and commercial banking. And all along the way, I was always attracted to new technologies that would reduce cost, increase better service, increase accuracy. And just throughout my career, that's been the case. I mean, just a couple of quick points. When I was in my 20s, I helped start a new payment company in Texas. It was the largest shared point of sale ATM network at the time in the very early 80s. This was a time where in Texas there were no branch banking. And so with no branch banking, how would you extend your brand out to the growing suburbs? And one way to do that was to use a point of sale network and an ATM network to do that. That company was called Pulse. It continued a 40-year record of success and is part of the Discover system that merged into Cap One. Or I shouldn't say merged into, but the merger was approved here recently. And so I've always used technology in my work. So when I saw the idea of blockchain, that's how I got attracted to crypto, was writing applications on a blockchain to take agency costs out of an analog activity. And when former chairman Maxine Waters was managing our committee, you may remember that was the time of Libra and what Facebook was up to and trying to generate a payments application on their Facebook network. It was also the time of the IMF and the Bank of International Settlements saying that every single country in the world needed a central bank digital currency. And so that really led me to engage with our committee. And I, at that time, was the lead Republican on two task forces we had, one on AI and one on fintech, back when even Maxine was our chair. So our committee is a well-educated committee. We've been talking about debating fintech, how to apply fintech, including crypto now for, I'd say since 2017 and 2018. So we've got a deep bench of people, both Republicans and Democrats, that understand the importance of this technology. But for me, it was, how do we lower cost and increase accuracy? And that was, I really have a lot of interest in the writing of applications to do just that on a blockchain.
Congressman, blockchain's one thing. Do you own any crypto?
I do not.
You do not?
No
okay,
crypto.
Had to ask.
Quick answer on that one. Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you, given your background that you used to work in private equity, investment banking, you talked about from 2017 to 2018, that's kind of when you started getting into blockchain technology, I believe is what you just said. How do you compare the traditional financial institutions and your era and career back then to what's going on in crypto today? There's a lot of conversations about TradFi versus DeFi, but
right.
Given that you actually did work in traditional finance, do you see that comparison? Do you see a bridge and a need to bridge that gap?
Oh, I do. I see. It's like when the earliest days of these fintech meetings in the Congress, the assertion was fintech companies are going to eradicate, traditional analog financial applications or even whole financial enterprises. And Then we went through a phase where it was really, instead of competition or eradication, it became a collaboration. And you saw a lot of fintech startups partner inside different aspects of traditional finance to carry out their mission. And that is so American. To me, that's such a traditional entrepreneurial capitalist system way of working, because both sides gained. And in my judgment, a forward-looking investment company or depository institution or fund manager is looking right now, how can I adopt all these decentralized finance protocols? How can I use blockchain to improve my own business, including eventually transitioning aspects of my business from traditional permissioned or intermediated finance to decentralized finance? And that's why I think this is one of the most exciting areas in industry, both, as I say, finance and non-finance, to consider. So the answer to your question is yes. I see many instances where you can benefit traditional finance through migrating a system from an intermediated typical platform onto a blockchain. You can help that between customers and within enterprises. And then in finance itself, I think you've already seen Franklin Templeton is a well-known traditional finance company in the mutual fund and asset management space. And their new money market platform is on a blockchain called a Benji. And I think people will be attracted to the lower cost and the ability to offer products to a wider variety of customers than you can due to the overhead in traditional finance. So right there, you get a more inclusive product, you get a lower cost product, and you get a more accurate product. And then for many, some people would deem it a more convenient product. What if is the only time I have a chance to think about my personal financial situation is that one break on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon when I can focus on it. And then you could actually perform some transactions and rebalancing. And so I think the idea of going to 7 day a week access to one's accounts, I think over time will be attractive, not to everybody, but it's a new attractive convenience factor to this work.
Yeah, Congressman, I want to ask you about that sort of TradFi to crypto sort of path. So, like you, I also, prior to exploring crypto, spent some time in the sort of traditional finance, like fintech and VC space. And I remember a time where fintech was really becoming embedded fintech, and everybody was a payments company. And there was this worry or this concern that, all right, so are you all money services businesses, right? Like is every single application. And there was kind of a regulatory path forward that some of those fintech companies found, whether it was like vendor stacks and putting together, sort of FBO accounts, if you were trying to do something like neobanking. What do you think crypto can borrow from that approach and that experience, whether it's building sort of product stacks or vendor arrangements, and get to that level of regulatory clarity where we're kind of easily digesting like what these products actually do?
Yeah. There is an evolution in product development. Some are shocking, like the adaptation of people signing up for ChatGPT in a 60-day period was extraordinary on a global basis. But look at all the adaptations that you had to already have done in order for that to take place. So you had to first be on the internet, and adaptation of the internet in the early 90s wasn't rapid, and even smartphone development wasn't. So now that people have an installed base of high-speed broadband, high-speed PCs on the desktop basis, and mobile computing power in their hand, you see something like adaptation of ChatGPT just sort of instantaneously. I bring that up just because there are easy things to do in morphing DeFi concepts or blockchain concepts into traditional finance. And look, money and investing and innovation, flows downhill too. So the more quickly that we're able to see adaptation in various places, I think is the faster full adoption. What does that mean? We could see, an aspect of putting stablecoin payments on a blockchain for international remittances or for accounts receivable in a big company that has hundreds of accounts receivable account holders, with a goal towards a smart contract where we reduce cost. People will get used to that concept. They'll see the interoperability of it. It allows the DeFi or crypto promoter or innovator or application writer to fine tune something, because to say something doesn't make it happen. And I think we all know that in these more complex tokenizations issues, the on-ramp, off-ramp interoperability of this, when it comes to either internal to the U.S. or certainly extraterritorial, is very important. And there's not a one-size-fits-all solution there. So your question's a great one. So you could see points of traditional finance where it's easily disintermediated to a DeFi protocol, and it's a chance for those innovators to fine-tune their knowledge and experiment so that eventually you see an entire segment essentially go to DeFi if that's what customers want. And let's let this be consumer-driven, both commercially and in households. But you asked, that's a really important question. And I think it talks about how this ecosystem will evolve, just as I mentioned a few minutes ago, of going from my fintech company will, replace all commercial banking transactions. Okay, well, that's good. And philosophically, that's the right strategy. But you've got to have consumer awareness, consumer participation, and that innovator maybe found that it was faster to collaborate with some banking systems, prove out the technology, show the consumer acceptance of it, and then you've seen those businesses take off as a result.
Do you think that the digital asset space will have its ChatGPT moment similar to the one that you brought up before with AI?
I think so, but I think it may be in different pockets. But the answer to the question is yes. But if we get a dollar-backed stablecoin bill authorized by both Congress, signed by President Trump, and a framework bill, you'll have the ability to let this experimentation come out of the shadows and be robust, both in big company internal innovations, where you have a lot of intrapreneurs right now all over American business experimenting with this, and then the classic entrepreneurs that are disrupting through technological advance. I think you'll see both. I think you'll see, to your comment about money services businesses, I think you'll see the regulatory system harmonize a bit, which we've not had during the Biden administration. You'll see the rules become more standard for people who want to go into this business directly or in partnership with a bank. I think you'll see the consideration of a nationwide federal payment license. I think that's an emerging topic that's not, imminent, but it's like the work we've done to try to have a nationwide privacy standard, which I think is very important, which you have a lot of entrenched interests when you try to do federal law that preempts state approaches. But these are all the kind of innovations I think that we'll see ahead of us.
Mm-hmm. And how has the congressional position towards digital assets changed over recent months? What are people saying that would surprise our listeners, or maybe not surprise us?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that's not surprising is that, the old expression for those of us that have done business startups is the average business success story takes 10 years. And so
overnight success. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
you for getting my paraphrase right. The average overnight success took 10 years. Certainly was the case in a lot of things I've worked on in my life. But here, going back to Maxine's chairmanship of the committee and the FinTech AI task forces, going forward, so much member staff education about blockchain, FinTech, AML, BSA issues. You get it. So I don't consider it just pivoting overnight. I think it was 5 years of hard work And I got to credit my great friend and former chairman of our committee, Patrick McHenry, for his tenacious leadership there, as well as our former speaker, Kevin McCarthy. Both were longtime believers in innovation in this space. And we got bipartisan votes in the House, both in the markup of stablecoins in the last Congress and in our market structure bill, both in the House committee and across the House floor. 71 Democrats voted with us. When we proposed to reject Joe Biden's staff accounting bulletin 121 on crypto custody, we got, I think, six votes in the House and I think 21 votes in the Senate, and including Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. So we had done a lot of member education. It's after those votes, particularly the FIT vote, 71 Democrats voting with the House Republicans, that you saw crypto political engagement ramp up, because now you've seen members actually take votes in the House and Senate on things related to the crypto ecosystem. And therefore, I would say from mid-year of certainly all of calendar 2024, you saw a lot of political activity. That certainly hasn't hurt anything. But I really always want to go back to the basics, which is it was member education about what is blockchain, what is crypto, how does it work, what is its place in our society, how does it interconnect with traditional finance, how does it interdict traditional finance. And all that work, to me, was more important than just the flash of a lot of politics in 2024. So that was the year, summer of 23 to summer of 24. Summer of 24 probably peaks with the excitement with President Trump going to the Bitcoin conference in Nashville, where he clearly, in a more full-throated way, expressed his support for innovation and crypto in a big way. And that led to, I think, some of the political victories we had in the fall, and teed up the fact that now we have a executive branch, a Senate, and a House that want to work on digital assets legislation.
If you've been in the space for a while, you know that crypto is not going anywhere. Governments are talking about Bitcoin reserves, traditional finance is moving on-chain, and if we're building for the long term, we need tech that's fast, reliable, and ready for everyday use. That's where our sponsor, Avalanche, comes in. It's a super fast blockchain network designed for builders, degens, businesses, and institutions. That's why JP Morgan, Citibank, BlackRock, Deloitte, Off the Grid, Sports Illustrated, and more are already using Avalanche. Want to learn more? Join us at the upcoming Avalanche Summit in London on May 20th through the 22nd. Hear directly from leading voices in the Avalanche ecosystem and learn more about the blockchain network driving Web3 adoption. Secure your ticket at avalancesummitlondon.com. See you there.
Yeah, Congressman, I want to ask about sort of that continuity, that you mentioned, and sort of going from like one Congress to another. Obviously you mentioned former Chair McHenry. Fantastic, very understanding sort of expert and friend of the industry. Now, obviously, outside of Congress, doing great things there. And he, of course, endorsed you very, very wholeheartedly when you took over that chairman role. Other areas in the industry, we had Congressman Ferguson, on the Tax Clarity Act, and now, looking for champions for that kind of legislation. I guess the question is, how do we build? I think it seems like legislators and regulators understand that the industry is here to stay. We can't be scared away quite so easily. But how do you build sort of that continuity and that institutional knowledge base as the legislative branch around a new industry like crypto? Like what can we do to sort of keep building on that momentum and making sure that, the right people are having the right conversations?
Well, that's also a very good question, a good thoughtful approach, because I think new industries that have never had any relationship with, government supervision or government regulation, can make some early mistakes about that. And don't forget, this is an industry that decentralization, almost by its own name, rejects the engagement of government in any way, shape, or form. So in the venture ecosystem around crypto, you've got very strictly, libertarians, all the way up to people who believe it's a gateway for greater inclusivity for people across the world to have access to their own money and protecting their own funds and being able to use them as they see fit. So that's a pretty broad political spectrum. So first engagement, number one, which is get to know the people working on these policy ideas, both in the executive branch and the legislative branch. And one tip I always give to people, they wonder why so much time is spent in member and staff education. Look, I was elected and came to Congress on January 3rd, 2015. So 10 years exactly, 10 years and 3 months of my sentence.
Happy anniversary.
I'm serving it all the way up. There's no chance for parole here. And 70% of the people I were sworn in with that January are not here anymore. So you've got to constantly be in touch in a steady way, talking about the utility, functionality, and purpose of blockchain applications and tokenized payments and tokenized assets in the real world, because to a new person in politics, whether to the state legislature or here in Washington, when you say crypto, they think that means Bitcoin or some meme coin. And that is, wow, is it a problem? I mean, I'm being candid with you. It's a problem. I mean, that is a very distracting part of the venture ecosystem in digital assets and crypto at large. And it is easily distracts members from the core situation, which is this is Web3. We're going to create opportunities for a new class of entrepreneurs and intellectual property creators by letting them own their own content, be paid for that content, and have, once again, a distributed network rather than a concentrated corporate network. And so I always encourage people, focus on the forest, not the tree of Bitcoin. The cool thing about Bitcoin is it's both. We have people writing applications on the Bitcoin network and embedding Bitcoin as a business strategy. But for a lot of people who don't understand anything about this, they view Bitcoin as this obviously strange, very speculative thing. There's no application engagement. It's about trading Bitcoin, having access to Bitcoin. And it pulls people out of a serious conversation about the future of technology and the future of the web. And clearly the same is true for meme coins, which were effectively green-lighted. When you think about it, this is so silly. Green-lighted by the Gary Gensler SEC. If you look at when he declared them as essentially not a security and look at the number of coin offerings out there and the ease in which one can generate that, it's just the exact opposite of the positions he was taking. It's really sad. I mean, from the point of view, if you say he's concerned about people being misled in crypto, and then the thing you greenlight that explodes are meme coins, that, of course, makes no sense. So that's why I think this persistent advocacy of talking about the utility, the applications on blockchains, some of the neat things people are already doing. I'm a storyteller at heart when you're selling. So people you're going to their office with either a young staffer that's working for them or for the member of Congress or the senator, and if they don't have any technological experience of this, they're a complete neophyte. And they'll know meme coin, Dogecoin, Melania coin, Bitcoin, the Bitcoin reserve. What is that for? What is that even about? And they'll be distracted from the important work we have to do regulatorily and legislatively to make sure that we have a great opportunity to create a technological advance here that's going to change so many aspects of how we do business with each other and across an economy.
Well, speaking of how we do business with each other, we'd love to get an update, Congressman Hill, on where things stand with stablecoin legislation right now. We understand staff has been hard at work over the Easter break. You guys are just coming back from that recess. So the House and the Senate, are they now aligned on a unified bill text that reconciles the differences between the Stable Act and the Genius Act versions?
Well, I think that work continues. Both bills got excellent bipartisan support. I personally thanked the Democratic senators that voted for my good friend Bill Hagerty's Genius Act. I really congratulated both Bill and Tim Scott and Cynthia Lummis for their excellent work in getting that through the Senate. These were the first Senate votes. This is the first Senate legislating in this arena, aside from taking a Congressional Review Act vote on Staff Accounting Bulletin 121. So my hat's off to Bill and Tim and Cynthia and their teams, Senator Gillibrand and others. And then here in the House, we tried when we marked our bill up to make it very, very close to the Senate bill. There's still some differences. We'll work those out as we go along. And what we've spent a good part of Easter break working on is seeking technical assistance from industry, the SEC, the Commodity Futures and Trading Commission, the CFTC, to the next draft for our market structure bill. So we passed, as I said, in the last Congress, FIT 21, with 71 Democratic votes. We are now preparing a draft to update that text, take all the feedback we've gotten over the last year, embed it in the text, and now, with great pleasure, I have to say, getting good technical assistance from over at the SEC and the CFTC and industry. And my goal is to see that legislation become bicameral is my goal. I'd like to see a consensus view on market structure from hopefully a bipartisan set of senators to join our already good bipartisan group of House members. And that will get the market structure bill in motion. You'll see us do a hearing on this and discuss this text probably in the coming weeks, because here's my commitment to President Trump and to his great advisor, my friend David Sachs. They've asked us to have both these bills to the president's desk before the August recess because they work together. You can't really have one without the other. You can't have a stablecoin bill and no framework in which to use a stablecoin. You don't know how to have it in custody. You don't know how to use it in an exchange concept. And so both are important. And I think you'll see us make important steps forward during the course of the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, just wanted to follow up there. There's a lot of chatter on the Hill about the possibility of stablecoin legislation getting bundled into the same bill as market structure. And I've heard you say they're two sides of the same coin. So is this going to be, as Trump would say, one big beautiful bill? Or do you see stablecoin getting passed first and then market structure? What's your vision on that?
I think Chairman Scott and I are still working through what we think the ultimate best legislative strategy is. We both acknowledge that we want to get both bills through the House and Senate and to the president's desk, and we're still having conversations about what the best way to go about that is.
Mm-hmm. What do you think would be the benefit or harm to passing them together?
Well, I think they're complementary. Number one, they have...
So benefits, yeah.
I think the benefits are they're complementary. They both have constituencies that are somewhat interconnected, but somewhat separate, which means you broaden the base by having members work on both. So, but really that best course forward is something that we've got to do collaboratively with our friends across the Capitol and closely working with the Trump Treasury and the Trump crypto advisor.
I have a question there just on sort of the process and setting precedent here. You mentioned the crypto, the work by the SEC. You know, I know there's another crypto task force roundtable this upcoming Friday. You know, they've been very engaging. Commissioner Peirce has put out a lot of good guidance. And some in the industry, especially when you're sitting in my seat as general counsel at like a layer 1 protocol, right? You have to remind people who are building things, regulatory guidance is great, legislation sticks. right?
Yeah.
And so can you just talk a little bit about how, obviously, like we would love to see that August deadline, that target get hit.
Yeah.
What kind of a world are we living in if legislation takes longer than we anticipated, or if it's not quite as clear cut and we're kind of stuck relying on just regulatory guidance, like from agencies?
Well, that's really, again, another excellent question. And it's, as I said, inside the venture ecosystem in Web3 and crypto, not everybody has an equal understanding of how to navigate the regulatory system or the legal system. And of course, under Gary Gensler, many were burned and spent a lot of money trying to navigate a false premise that he teed up, which is, hey, just come in and register, which was just so disingenuous and completely inappropriate, which is why I'm delighted that Commissioner Peirce has used her chairmanship of this task force to help get both the enforcement wheels of the SEC on track, as well as the regulatory process. So let's use an example. You can petition the commission, for exemptive relief. And they could grant that to give a power to a broker-dealer, maybe to deal in digital assets, or to someone to offer a 40 Act product in digital assets. And you've seen some approvals. Only after the court forced the Gensler SEC did we see exchange-traded product approvals for Bitcoin, and then shortly thereafter, Ethereum. So exemptive relief can be helpful to an existing business with a discrete request, and it can be fairly permanent, but it isn't something that's going to be rolled out in a way that could be that effective for lots of innovators. The only way to do that is through permanent law change, and it's worth the wait. Let me give you another example. I mean, some people, and I made this point at the digital chamber meeting a few weeks ago, you might think, I can just solve all these problems by petitioning the CFTC or the SEC for my project, and it'll all be taken care of. Or that would be like exemptive relief. Or I can just ask them to write a regulation without a law change to just do this. Well, that would take months, and then it would be litigated. So it might be a bill, and let's just include the elapsed time from McHenry's stablecoin and FIT drafts of spring of 23. I think we're right on track, but it's not a panacea to think that you're going to solve all these problems by either proposing a rule that could take months to promulgate and suffer litigation, or use exemptive relief. And I think if we do the stablecoin bill, where we're right on the cusp of a solid product there, and we work through the improvements that we think we're going to have in regulatory framework, and we have President Trump and David Sachs say those products appear to be the right direction for us, and we have some bipartisan consensus in the House and Senate, we've got a real opportunity to make law here in the next few weeks. You're right to say it's not 100% chance, but I would say let's ask me this question mid-June and see if I answer it any differently. Let's see what kind of progress that we can make over the next few weeks. And I would remind people, we wrote FIT in March and we passed it, I think in June of, so basically in April, May, and June, we had that product, moving. So I'm optimistic we can do this.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for what it's worth, I mean, in like a post sort of Chevron deference world, right? Like your point about litigating all these things, with regulators, regardless of what happens over the next few years is just not a world that the industry wants to live in, right? Like we are very supportive of getting the legislative sort of clarity there. So yeah, I would love to ask that question again in June.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to hold us accountable, because I know the energy of of our Senate companions and our House companions to work on this. And also to people listening who want to help get this done, please help break down barriers of understanding about utility and the importance of this legal change, both within the industry, if they're doubting Thomas's that this is the right approach, but certainly with members of the House and Senate. I would say particularly Democrats, and I don't mean that in an offensive way, but here in the House, we generally have Republican consensus on these bills and the direction to take, both from our libertarian-oriented Republicans as well as our just pro-innovation technology Republicans. But I'd say Democrats are still split here. And I would say there are literally some that argue it should not exist and it should not be done. So you got to think about that. I'm not sure how to tackle it, but I do know that's true. And then a second group is concerned about, disproportionately, I think, concerned about AML BSA concerns, Bank Secrecy Act, anti-money laundering concerns about this new, very, global technology. And some discount the tracking capability and documented capability of a permission staked validated blockchain. Some recognize that it's there. Some would argue that it's not really there, that it's a figment of our imaginations. So a third group would be there's no utility in this. And that's the group that maybe is only focused on what they read about the amount of money that's been put in a collectible item, like a meme coin that doesn't have any utility and really doesn't have any prospect to utility necessarily, even if it's on a good functioning blockchain. It really just is what it is. So those three categories, anyone listening who helps, they can talk to members of the House and Senate about breaking down those barriers that they should be supporting a well-crafted bill. That would be a big help.
That's definitely well said, and I think the industry wants to continue down that path. I think we've talked a lot about kind of the technology itself. I do want to talk to you about markets a little bit and get your take here. So recently we've had some pretty extreme volatility, and there's been sort of I'll call it like a longstanding kind of complaint or observation by folks in the industry. Or holders of digital assets, that it's been really heavily correlated to like the NASDAQ and the S&P 500, right? Mm-hmm. As they go, we go. And we seem to be deviating from that a little bit over the past kind of week or two. I don't want to jinx anything, but, Bitcoin is starting to behave a little more like the reserve asset that it was kind of supposed to be, when it was initially sort of announced or promised. What do you think about like the deviation from like traditional tech stocks and digital assets? Do you think that's a positive, negative, just something that's going on? Like, what's your take on that?
Even after over a decade of Bitcoin sales and the steepness of the curve and the halving process, I still am not smart enough to know the answer to your question. Because when I look for that correlation and try to see it in a sustained way, I don't. And so it seems still to me not a counter-cyclical feature of a reserve type asset, but you've also seen the dollar reverse in the face of the President Trump's tariff strategy, where normally the bond and stock markets would operate differently in this kind of a situation, and they haven't. They've been doing the opposite of what they would, I think, in conventional wisdom do. And while Bitcoin's moved up, you've got this seasonality aspect of Bitcoin trading too, at different points after certain volumes of transactions in the halving process. So I'm not there yet to be able to answer that question, and I don't think that's a negative thing. You've got to have two sides of a market that really are understanding it, and it's got to have the transparency and reporting and all. So I think it's still, I would consider it very much, if I were back in my old job, managing money for people, which is what I did before I was in Congress, I would still have it in a emerging asset class and treat it as such, depending on the strengths and weaknesses and financial acumen of my client. Which is not a put down. It just means it is what it is. It's an emerging activity. And I think if we get these two bills passed, you're going to see some stability about offering utility tokens and stories about how they're being adapted and so many opportunities for the venture money that has been put out in different aspects of the DeFi system. So I think that will lead to I hope what looks like a late 90s view in the post 1996 Telecommunications Act, where you saw an incredible decade of innovation on Web 1 that had some winners and losers. If you think everybody's a winner, that's not the way the world works. I don't have my pets.com stock anymore, and I wasn't smart enough in 98 to buy Amazon. So, you've got to recognize that it's an emerging market, but a very, very exciting one with some of the best people in the world thinking about how to do this.
Absolutely.
Congressman, we're wrapping up here, but just want to ask you quickly, what do you want your legacy in Congress to be after all this is over?
That I was able to maintain any hair left on my head after after the last decade. No,
you got good hair.
I'm a big believer in we should embrace technology. That's why I was so excited about Mike Johnson having an AI task force that the two Californians co-chaired last year, Ted Lieu and Obernolte. They did a great job. And our view was, we looked sector by sector, look at the opportunities for AI adaptation. And we don't want to snuff that out through some dumb regulatory process that we don't even know what to regulate. So that's why my legacy will be that we embrace technology. We saw the advance of financial services for families and business that benefited through permissionless blockchains, and that it was just as game-changing as passing the 1996 Telecommunication Act that gave us the opportunity to all hold more computing power than in the Apollo program in our hand in a smartphone.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%. Congressman Hill, thank you so much for coming on today.
Fantastic
we enjoyed
to be with
having
you guys.
Yes, thank you.
Talk to you soon.
In June.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
In June, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.